still been pretty significant despite the huge.
Significant what?
They've been, I mean, the yields for soy and I believe it's corn, while it's down, it's still pretty significant nationwide.
You're talking about price?
No, I'm talking about yields.
Production? Okay. The bottom line is that we want to make sure that there's capital available for those that individual farmers that do need to and want to pursue cash flow needs. Again, this is something that we put together in cooperation with the Illinois Farm Bureau. As I made a statement before, I'm not looking to keep a program just because it was there before. If there is no demand, if it's not configured right, we either change it or we eliminate it. The agriculture community has told me that they do need and want to have a program like this. So, and I'm going to take a couple of seconds or a couple of moments to explain to you because it might be a little minutia, but I think it's important to understand. The Treasurer of the state of Illinois, my responsibility is the safeguarding of the monies that are in the Treasury, and then if we can bring in a return on it, what's the best return we can provide? What I've decided is that link deposit, well, let me explain. Link deposit is where the Treasury will say to a financial institution, if you would like to have some of the Treasury's money, then you may receive it at, and we are providing it at 1%. Then if they want to add on, they can add on up to 3.5. So that makes the 4.5%. That's a discretion for them. They have their paperwork. They take the risk. The Treasury doesn't do the loan. The institution does. And then a bit of a margin in there for them. What I did with my investment portfolio team is I said if we were not to participate in Link, if we were to take this money, what would we receive over a period of time? And the 1% mark was, a few basis points here above or below was the right mark. Before this, the Treasury was offering it at 2%. So basically, we are making these interests available to the banks at a better rate. And it is still competitive if we were to use other instruments. What I then said is we will now lock this in so that the institutions and the community, farming community, will know that for the next 6 months, they will be able to get money at maximum 4.5%. We're going to evaluate this in 6 months. If we need to change the 1%, we will do that. If it continues, great. If we have to eliminate it, we will. Now, to your point, as far as pricing and so forth, yeah, that may be, but it's still a cash flow issue. Agriculture is a capitally intense business. You still have the season coming up. You still need to buy fertilizer and seed. You then have your equipment. You may need to have construction programs being done on the farm. The limits we put in too are slightly higher than my predecessor had. We're at 120,000 and 240,000, and very blunt, that is not a lot of capital. In the production side of it, but it is enough to have it as a seed if the financial institution decides to expand the borrower's limit. That would be their own decision, and they would be able to negotiate whatever rate they'd like to have with it. So, and again, this isn't the Treasurer of Illinois creating a new program for the press pop. This is the Treasurer of Illinois taking a program that was dramatically successful, had a massive decline in participation, went to the customers and the parties, financial institutions, and said, what went wrong? What can we do to make it better? We've all agreed to this. This is a consensus, and we're going to play it out for 6 months and see where it goes.
Well, why was there that massive decline in participation?
Well, one reason was the interest rate. The Treasury was making it available to the institutions at 2%. The institutions could get the money less than that. Okay, the market portfolio that I deal with in the Treasury, if I could get 2% today for the taxpayers, that'd be ideal, but we're not there. We're hovering down around the 1%. So that's one thing. The interest rate was not well received by the institutions. The second thing was there was additional type of paperwork necessary with regards to the drawdown, what they needed to have to be able to do the drawdown. What we said is we will do it flat, make it more receptive to the financial institutions, and I think those are the two biggest components.
So it wasn't necessarily less farmers wanting to participate, it was less financial institutions wanting that 2%?
I think that'd be a fair way to say it, yes. It's not that there was less demand. Well, let me say it differently. There was less demand under the rates that were available. We believe that if we make the rates more available, that there will be people to participate. And it also makes it more inviting for the financial institutions to be able to participate. You know what? Let me get that exact. I probably should. We've got those. There was some that we completely eliminated. There was some that. Well, in fact, give me the press release. On the ag one, the one on Green Invest, that was a whole separate program. We've decided to roll it into ag and cut back, and it's not like it's not that you're saving money from the Treasury. It's just that the marketing people will have less things in their brochures and less things on the website, made it less clutter. Let's get the exact ones. And I should have had that, Bernie. Sorry.
I don't think that anyone's doubting that farming is important for Illinois, but could these loans have been targeted at a different industry, maybe something more along the lines of technology or something that could grow jobs rather than retain jobs?
Sure, like the one under job creation, the second bar.
Yeah, no, I see that.
Yeah, all of those are linked deposit programs. The one that we're talking about, ag, is because that's the largest industry in the state of Illinois. All of these other programs down here are linked deposits. We've reconfigured the spread rate on those and reconfigured the interest rate on those as well. So an example of what you just brought up could fall well under job creation. Yes, you're right, and I do want to do those. We also look at areas down here in disaster restoration and those with developmental disabilities. We have those available. So those are all available. The reason I just focused on this one at the moment, because that was a $1 billion program.
And this says address and balance and diversity of staff and achieve parity. What changes were made, what numbers?
Ethnicity, the peoples that were brought in regards to various ethnic backgrounds. There is a Department of Human Resources. There is a standard that to reach that if you reach a certain proportion of management team of various ethnicities, that you reach what is considered to be the optimal level, and we have done that. Again, we'll get those for you, Bernie. Human rights. There you go. It's human rights. And it's in regards to African Americans being in management team, it's Asians being involved in management team, it's Latinos being involved with it. And when I came into the office, that had not been reached, and we have done that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't know if this is already asked. How much participation do you expect in the Ag Invest program?
I talked to the president of the Farm Bureau about that, and some of the financial institutions. He seemed to be pretty optimistic that this is going to be something very inviting. I don't want to go put a number out there right now. What I've done, though, is I have instructed my portfolio management team to make $500 million available for the entire LINK program. And if we reach that $500 million, to let me know again, and we will evaluate each participant to see if we expand that before the 6 months are up or not. The other thing that I've done is we will soon have available to us an objective methodology to run these programs through, so that we will have an objective ability to say we take the 1% interest, which is competitive for the portfolio today. But in doing this, the idea is that it helps economically churn, so we create jobs and stimulus. There are methodologies available, and I want to run LINK through that. That was not done prior to. I'm working with a couple of universities today to modify existing methodologies for this application. And the example I can give you is like when Mitsubishi Motors, was lured into Illinois back in the 1980s. There was tax dollars involved with that. There was roads and sewer and job training and tax abatements and the like. But there's models to say you doing that gives this amount of a return and recycle back in the economy. I'm going to apply that same type of methodology to LINK. Does somebody else have some questions? I mean, you men go right, keep on going, but if they're...
Can you explain a little bit about and I believe this legislation was recently passed, the paychecks becoming unclaimed property after 1 year instead of 5?
Right.
What brought that about?
Well, first of all, let's explain what that is. If someone has not, it's a paycheck that's never been cashed. So the theory is, and we've gotten this from other states, that if a paycheck is outstanding, it hasn't been cashed in 1 year, it likely isn't going to have the better chance of being cashed 4 more years from then. So keep in mind what the treasurer does. Receives the unclaimed property, it is still the rightful owner of that individual or their heir. So what it does, as opposed to a company or government having this uncashed money, it comes to the Treasury. They tell us who that person is. We then put it within our system to work on trying to identify and let them know that this is available to them, whether it's through the internet, whether it's through Cash Dash and those types of things. It was evaluated and decided that if it's been 1 year, it's not going to get a better chance of being cashed in 5.
And how long does the treasurer's office keep it then before it gets...
In perpetuity. To what?
Does it never get turned over to the state? There's no...
Turned over to the state here, but is still claimable by the individual for perpetuity. Correct. Right.
Don't mean to monopolize
No, they can see the dean of the chambers here.
Somebody more cynical than I wondered why the treasurer is having a 100-day report, and does this indicate you're running for something else?
Well, that's pretty cynical, isn't
It
it?
is, but obviously it wasn't my idea.
So is that a question or a statement? What is the question?
Are you running for something? I mean, it just, why is it important for the treasurer to have 100 days?
I think it's important when a government elected official had made commitments during the campaign, set benchmarks when they got sworn into office to come back and tell the people that here are the benchmarks and they have been attained. I think it's the same type of performance standard you'd have of a new CEO coming into a new company to have his board of directors be told that they will have a benchmark, and that CEO stands up 100 days later and say, here they are, and we met them.
Going off that same question, are you possibly eyeing a higher office in 2013?
You know, today is April 19th, and I've only been in office as a state treasurer 100 days. There's still three more years plus for my term, and I intend to try to be the best treasurer I can and to turn this office around to be the best service operation government can provide.
You told Sam McGunn you wouldn't mind being governor.
Well, he asked me that question directly. You didn't.
Can you give us a little bit of an update, if you could, on the state situation when it comes to the backlog of bills, when it comes to, I guess, the deficit for this fiscal year?
Yeah. Let me answer a different question and see if that gets to where you want to go. After the governor's budget address, he came down off the floor, and he and I personally visited before he left the chamber. And at that time, I told him, I said, Governor, I want to work with you. About an hour and a half, 2 hours later, the governor's office called and said the governor would like to meet with you. So, of course, I'm thinking I'm going to a coffee clutch with Sheila Simon and Lisa and Jesse and all of us go down there and have coffee and talk about stuff. So it wasn't. It was the governor, myself, his chief of staff, and one of my staff members. We sat there about an hour privately talking through, and I was very candid with the governor. I said, Governor, I really do want to work with you. I understand you're a different political party than me. That's okay. We're over that. But I'm the treasurer. And he reminded me, of course, he was a treasurer and really appreciates the office and gave me, in fact, he sent me his old annual reports, and it was very, very cordial. I told him I don't support the $8.7 billion borrowing plan, 14-year payment, balloon at the end. I said, I don't support any of that stuff. But I will work with you on short-term borrowing, which I can either sign off on or not. I will work with you on interfund transfers, which I can have weigh in on or not, repayment times. And I absolutely want to work with you on capturing that Medicaid match, which at that time we were still at the 59%, which is now since April 1st dropped to 57%, and as of July 1st will drop to 50%. Since that time, Dave Vaught, his title director of the Bureau of the Budget, whatever it's called today, he and I met 2 or 3 times privately, going through various scenarios that the governor has suggested that we may be able to work together on, and I gave him my feedback. And I'm telling you all this because, to answer your question, I am cautiously optimistic that I think that we can come together here in Springfield to resolve this. I am not going to be a no because I happen to be of a different party. I'm going to be, let's make this thing work, and if I don't agree with you, I'm going to be respectful, and we're going to close the door, and we're going to talk about it. And I feel very comfortable in my relationship right now with the governor and his budget people on what we can or cannot do as the state treasurer to help bring us around to do these things.
What is the atmosphere like this legislative session as compared to others when you've been a state senator and budget negotiations? I mean, it's pretty much, it's getting, I would say, from my perspective, it's getting a little bit worse.
I'm gonna. You maybe have a different vision of it than I do right now. Obviously, it's a little different from being on the second floor compared to when I was on the third floor. I see, and I want to be sensitive how I say this, but I see Speaker Madigan and Leader Cross actually working together as best as I've seen them in any recent years. I see them when they're talking through an agreement on what they vision the revenue projections to be, an agreement in regards to MUST doing something on the public pension programs. So I see that as a positive sign. The difference I sense is that we don't have an agreed number between the Senate and the House. It's about $1 billion off. That's okay. I mean, that they're independent bodies differently. I honestly sense that this is, let me say it differently. I sense that the majority party realizes how bad it is now. I don't know that they really understood that when they passed the income tax increase. I think now that the income tax increase is passed, now that we've seen current numbers coming in, and we are seeing the unfunded liability of our pension systems becoming a true, stark reality, I believe they now realize this has got to get fixed. So that's why I said earlier, I am cautiously optimistic that before this is all over with at the end of May, that we will be able to have some kind of a reasonable effort on the finances of our state. The sticking points will be, the two biggest sticking points will be the public pensions and workers' comp.
Can current pension benefits be changed for current workers in your opinion?
In my opinion, if you are saying that as of a date when a new law may go into effect, anything that was already in the system, they are already vested, that cannot be touched. I do believe through legal opinion and constitutional review that anything henceforward could be if there was choice. And that, I think, is the operative word. And it should be litigated. I mean, you know, we always, for years and years, we've been, oh, it's unconstitutional. Litigate it. Because until we do it, nobody's going to really know. But I believe that if you provide from a day forward the choice, so you don't make someone leave the defined benefit program, you may have them have to contribute more to participate in the defined benefit, or a choice to go to some other alternative such as a 401k. I do believe it is constitutional if it is properly structured.
And it is for current employees.
I believe it has to be for current employees.
So that
But,
differs significantly from like color to the staff report, correct? 'Cause you said
oh yeah, of
current
course it
employees,
does.
yeah.
No, of course it does. And I respect, you know, Madeir's report, but I mean, that is a legal opinion. I can tell you right now that there are as equally, if not, there is equally qualified individuals that can provide the alternative to that. And as far as I'm concerned, let's move it forward, make sure it's the best that it can be drafted, and then litigate it. Because we're going to be back here 1, 2, 3, 5 years from now and say it was unconstitutional. Well, let's run it all the way to the Supremes and get the answer.
You mentioned the discrepancies between the House and Senate budget numbers.
Sure.
As the state treasurer, I mean, I would think that you have a really good idea of, you know, what may be coming into the state. Do you have any?
I'm not going to, you know, I honestly, no. Projections on revenue is not what the treasurer does. Anything else?
Back to that, the Medicaid borrowing, Wayne has kind of put to legislature indicated he wanted the legislature possibly want to make a $2 billion plan. It seems like you're saying that you guys may be in talks of doing borrowing between you and the governor and the comptroller instead, or?
Well, let me just, I don't know that borrowing is the word. I mean, borrowing, but it depends on where and how you configure that. I mean, there are certain funds in the Treasury that if we had some agreement to put the cash out there to catch the federal Medicaid match with the agreement that it's paid back in a certain period of time with whatever the interest the Treasury portfolio would have received to be paid back also, those are the kind of discussions I'm willing to engage in. I mean, I've told the governor that, and I've also told Speaker Madigan's staff that. You know, we've been in discussions with them as well as far as what we could possibly do to be of assistance in that. It's not sweeping the funds. I want to be very careful. I don't want to sweep those funds out. And I also understand that they've got the capacity to do borrowing because of statutory enablement. But what I'm talking about is truly working with the finance officer of this state to say these funds could be available for a 30 or 60-day period as long as it is paid back unqualified and with the interest that the portfolio would have received had they have stayed in there. So why don't we,
On the
Melissa?
pension thing, real quickly, are you advocating that change be made?
Yes. I am a strong supporter of changing the pension system such that in the future we would have participants having a choice. Okay?
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Happy 100 days.